And so, as Valerie has said, my world is the world of interfaith. And actually, right now, it's Interfaith Month. And so I have been really impressed over the last 20 years and also moved about or by these faith leaders that I have encountered and their work. For example, I just wanted to mention that this past October, I was really privileged to attend a meeting in the Vatican, which was convened by Pope Francis to bring together religious leaders and scientists to address the climate change in preparation of this COP26 climate conference. And the reason for this is that 80% of the people in this world belong to some faith community. And so then the power of these communities can really be harnessed to make a difference in the world, in combating climate change and all these related problems that we have, to work for this healing of the earth. And so I thought that for tonight, I would like to take up this topic of faith a bit. So you may have heard this already, but I grew up Catholic in Germany. And so as a child, my mother would tell us these stories from a children's Bible at night. And they really gave me this first sense of this big and fascinating world. It was created by God somewhere and oriented towards God. And I was part of that. And so then I went to Catholic grade and high school, and my parents would often take us to these beautiful cathedrals in this area of Germany, the western part, close to France where we lived, in Metz and Strasbourg, or even to Notre Dame. And that already as a child, I would feel that there was this light coming through the windows, giving me this mystical feeling of an infinite beauty, or yes, something that filled me with awe every time. So then I was 20 years old when I met Shifu, or Master Xindao, who was to become my Buddhist teacher in Taiwan, who then still lived in the small hermitage near a lake in the east of Taiwan. And of course, those encounters with Shifu raised many questions in me about my own faith and my own self-understanding. And so then I enrolled at the University of Munich for Chinese studies and philosophy. And I really had faith, I really had trust in what Shifu told me, namely that I need to meditate. You need to meditate if you really want to understand what the Buddha's teaching is all about. And so this faith then really brought me in touch with Zanbo Zen through Father Inomia Lassalle, who became my first teacher. And so when I, a little bit later, 1 year later, returned to Taiwan for conference again, I had faith in what Shifu told me when he said I should take, or I'm invited to take his refuge, my refuge with him. Namely that taking refuge with him would not bring me into any conflict with my Catholic faith. And honestly, I found that to be true. So I think if asked you, each of you, if faith has been important in your life, I think you would give very different answers depending on where you come from, whether you have experienced a faith tradition as nourishing or as oppressive. And again, if I asked you if you think that faith plays an important role in Buddhism, I think you would also have quite different perspectives on that question. So did the Buddha have faith? So when the Buddha escaped the enclosures of his comfortable life in the palace and ventured outside, he saw these realities of life outside of the palace wall: illness, old age, and death. But at the very end, he also had a vision, this sight of something, somebody, something that might help him to understand these realities and be free, liberated in their midst. That was this vision of a spiritual practitioner, a yogi. And that inspired him to really gather all of his courage to leave behind his sheltered life in the palace, his wife and his little son, trusting that he would find an answer to these questions about life, to all of the suffering and the impermanence, to that meaning of life. What is it all about? And so that faith, that trust in our potential to find these answers for ourselves, these experiences, that is one and the same word in Chinese. It's Xin. And if you look at the character, there is a person and then there is speech. So it also implies this utmost sincerity. And honestly, I think that all of us are here because of the same faith or trust that this practice of our Zen practice will open up to us new perspectives about our own life. So this perspective that liberates us from these narrow confines of the small I, me, mine, of all these stories and dramas, and to open us up to this boundless heart and mind that we cultivate in our practice. So I wonder, don't we all come to Zen because somewhere we intuitively know that the story that we often tell ourselves about ourselves is often that very story that binds our spirit down and makes us unhappy, because we so easily identify with that story about something that happened in the past, something we cannot let go of, perhaps something that others did to us or we did to others. And then we move on to our worries about the present or our fears about the future. And so that kind of story burdens our spirit because it's often only so partial. And so deep down, we know that there is this other infinite dimension to our being, that what the Buddha discovered in his enlightenment experience when he awakened under the Bodhi tree. And the Buddha, of course, before he awakened, he experienced challenges to his faith and the practice. And I think we also face those challenges from time to time. So he committed, or he practiced austerities for 6 years. And when he then decided to have some food and go the middle way, his companions left him. And when he resolved not to get up from his seat under the Bodhi tree until he would awaken, until he would be free from all this confusion, from this ignorance, from these limitations, then Mara, the evil one, started to attack him, showing him these enticing images to break his concentration, his resolve. And so when that was without any effect, then Mara sent, as text says, an army of demons to scare the Buddha. And the Buddha still remained unmoved by his fears. And so then finally Mara tried to attack the Buddha's faith, his own trust in his own potential to awaken, by telling him, enlightenment belongs to me, Lord Mara alone. It is not yours. Do you have any witness who can speak for you? And so then in response, the Buddha touched the earth. And the earth itself shook and then said, I bear you witness. And with that, Mara was vanquished and fled away. So the earth, meaning this whole existence, this whole universe, confirmed the Buddha's birthright, our birthright, our potential to awaken to our true nature. This nature has been ours from the very beginning, has never not been ours. And so with that assurance, the Buddha continued sitting the whole night until he woke up with the rising of the morning star. And of course, I think you all may have heard stories in which demons or spirits try to divert spiritual seekers from their path, so to test their faith, as it were. And we know that we have the story that Jesus was tempted by Satan in the desert with promises of power, bread, and fame. Or there are stories of many saints in many traditions that where they had to deal with spirits and disturbances. And my own teacher, Shifu, often told us about his experiences in meditating in an old pagoda or on the graveyards. And the spirits would come and they would make this wailing noises, or they would bump into doors and walls, and it really scared him. And it really also took all his resolve and his faith to come and stay, to stay and overcome those disturbances. And that, he says, finally happened when he embraced those demons, those spirits, with compassion, telling them, I am sitting here for you as well, so that you can be released and at peace. And perhaps that is a good way for us to practice as well, facing our own demons, telling them, I'm sitting here so that you can be at peace. So our spiritual path has to do with facing inner and outer obstacles or challenges. And I think our demons often appear in this form of the monkey mind that just tries to disturb our concentration, to get us away from just this breath, just this very moment, from just mu, just being present. And of course, monkey mind would rather have us dispersed in so many directions so that we cannot even reach a good state of samadhi, because that, of course, would be the end of monkey mind. And so that's why it often takes this little form of Mara and tells us, what are you doing here anyway? Do you think this enlightenment business is for you? Don't waste your time here. But so anyway, after Mara fled away, the Buddha awakened with the rising of the morning star, and the transmission of light, the Denko Roko, describes this experience as follows. The Buddha explained, today I and all beings in the great white earth have realized the path together. One realization, nothing, nobody left outside of it. There is simply no more outside or inside. The Buddha so clearly realized that this light of the morning star, this is his own light. It shines in everything. There are no hindrances, no boundaries, no matter whether it's as big as the Mount Himalaya or as tiny as a grain of salt. There's absolutely nothing that could block that light. So there is this saying that comes from there. Everything has its own light. You have your own light. No difference whatsoever. So there is a book, you probably know that, by Sister Elaine McInnes on the Michelinist koans, and it's called Light Sitting in Light. So Sister Elaine, of course, was a Catholic nun who founded the Zendo in Manila, and later also taught in Oxford, where she brought Zen to the prisons. And of course, she was also the teacher of John Gaynor, who was Henry Shukman's teacher. So this light sitting in light, it's beautiful, and it expresses her own experience, realizing that there is literally nothing but this light that fills everything. So we can call that light the light of our heart, or the light of emptiness, of our Buddha nature, the light of God, of Allah, or that light of the eternal. And sometimes, it happens that we just discover this light quite unexpectedly, and that it then fills us with this deep sense of wonder, of peace and joy. So that happened to me with during a retreat with Father LaSalle in Japan. At that time, I was really struggling with Mu and that question, is God love? Is God love? Mu. Is God love? Mu. And so that went on until suddenly during one sit, I saw everything and everyone, the other sitters, the zendo, the floor, the walls, this whole existence flooded in some light. And that was clearly a light of love. And when it happened, I was feeling like jumping up and shouting at everyone, why are you sitting here so seriously? Don't you know that you are loved? And then I started laughing and crying. I had never felt that happy and free before. And so this was really one of the key moments of my life, this little spiritual opening. And really many years afterwards, when I would only speak about it or remember it, it would just bring the same flood of tears again. But I never doubted about that experience ever. So then Yamada Kon Woshi, to whom I was sent to be checked out by Father LaSalle, he confirmed this and said, yeah, this is a Kensho experience. And Yamada Roshi always told us, at the time we were Christian and also Jewish students, that we have to find out for ourselves how this experience really relates to our own faith. So then when he gave me these checking koans on Mu, and one of them is, what is the origin of Mu? He looked at me and he says, tell me, what is the origin of God? And then I spent the entire night lying awake, working on this koan. What's the origin of God? Until I realized what I was doing, I was building up this notion of God outside there again, and me down here, thinking about of where is this origin? And with that realization, really, any notion of me down here and God out there, it was just wiped away. And I went the next morning, I went to Doksan with Yamada Roshi, and I told him the answer, and I cried. And he said, yes, that's right. So why are you crying? Really, those were tears of repentance, I think, about my former blindness, but also of this boundless gratitude. And so then these experiences, did they make me lose my faith? No, to the contrary, they really made it more intimate. And I think Zen practice does that to us. It really cuts completely through to the roots and then lets us go of all these obstacles in our mind that hinder our heart and spirit. These are these obstacles, but our habitual mind somehow that always thinks in terms of separation and distance. This distance between myself and others, between myself and the universe, these mountains, rivers, and the great wide earth, as Dogen says, between myself and God, or whatever it is that we think is outside of us and perhaps more important or less important. Anyway, it's a distance. But our practice completely wipes that distance away and puts us right here where we are. There's just one existence, no boundaries whatsoever. It's just one life. So I asked myself, thinking about this talk, did our ancestors in the Zen tradition have faith? So do you think that Bodhidharma, this legendary first ancestor, would have undertaken this long, dangerous voyage from India to China if he hadn't had faith in what his teacher, Prajnanar, told him to do? But I think more importantly, if he hadn't had faith in his own realization, why would he risk his life to bring this teaching to a distant foreign country? And then Eckhart, the second ancestor, would he really have stood in the snow and cut off his arm as a sign of his earnestness if he didn't have any faith in Bodhidharma's ability to put his mind at rest? And then how about Sozan, the third ancestor? would he have come to Eka, the second ancestors, if he did not have this faith that Eka could help him dealing with his illness and with the problems that he thought this illness presented for his practice? So I just want to look at that story a little bit more. This is how the text tells it in the Denko Wakyu, or the transmission of the light. So Sozan, the third ancestor, went to instruction to the second ancestors, also the 29th patriarch, that was Eka. And he said, the body of your disciple is entwined with leprosy. I beg you, master, release me from my sins. And the patriarch said, bring me your sins, I'll wipe them out for you. The master sat still for a while and then said, I have searched for my sins, I cannot find them. And the patriarch said, I have then already finished wiping out your sins. You should now live in accordance with the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So this Sozan was a layperson when he came to Eka. And he believed that his illness was caused by negative karma from the past, which is a very common notion in Buddhist cultures. And so this very notion about this negative karma was a huge obstacle. It really eroded his trust in life, his faith that he could also attain realization like others. Perhaps this is really, as I said, this is one of the ways in which Mara keeps us bound. We think that we have done something so bad in life that we hate ourselves, and we think maybe that everybody else also hates us. Or we think we really deserve this, that this enlightenment is for others, but certainly not for us. Last month, Ruben and I were listening to an audio book by C.H. Hauser called Family of Origin. And that is just such a Sozan story, in which the main character, Elsa, believes that she has done something unforgivable, really unforgivable, bad, that destroyed her family. And then she remains caught in that very notion, continuing to punish herself and taking her unhappiness out on others. And that whole story switches between past and present, but it always follows this question of what had happened in the past that everything could go so wrong. Of course, I don't have the room to go into the details of the story here, but the main point is that Elsa, thinking of herself as unworthy of love at the beginning of the story, finds a completely new hold on life after she realizes throughout all of those twists and turns in the story that her stepbrother and mother are still family to her, that they still love her. But so here is Sozan begging Eka to release him from his sins. And Eka, he had been in a similar situation once, earnestly begging Bodhidharma to put his mind at rest. Of course, we don't know what had been on Eka's mind at that time, but all of us definitely share this experience of having a mind that's not at rest. As one look at the state of the world today, all this suffering, the destruction, the division, this complete destruction of the ecological balance of our earth, and that very threat to our own very survival, the threat to the survival of so many species, that would really help to put our mind at unrest. And of course, it's happening. And so just as Bodhidharma told Huikwe or Eka to bring him his mind, making Eka realize that he cannot really grasp this mind. Eka also tells Senzan to bring him his sins. And I think that Sozan really goes and looks for his sins from the past. And again, what does he realize? He cannot really find them. There is nothing he can grasp there and bring and hold and bring to Eka. And so he comes back and says, I've searched for my sins, I cannot find them. And so then this habitual shell, which has enclosed Sozan up to that point, has received a huge crack. And Eka gives it one last push, saying, I have already finished wiping them out for you. All those sins, everything is wiped away. Nothing is left. And so in that instant, Sozan realizes that unbound horizon, that completely open world of the true self, where there is originally not a single thing. Where could any dust settle there? There is no sin, there is no holiness, nothing. Originally, there is nothing there, nada, nada, as St. John of the Cross says. And so our practice of Mu is just to break open to that world, this infinite existence, which is empty and radiant like the sky, and to realize it just in this breath, just in this sound, just sitting, dropping everything away that really blocks this light. So after his awakening, Sozan wrote a poem entitled, Am I disconnected?
No, it's fine. It's fine, Maria.
It looked like, okay, sorry about that. Yes. So after his awakening, Sozan wrote this poem, which is entitled Faith or Trust in the Mind. And this mind, and in Chinese, is also the same character for the heart. So this kokoro, this center of our being, which is completely open to the transcendent. And the first two lines of that poem are rather quite well known, because they appear as koan number 2 in the Blue Cliff record in the Hekigan Wako, saying, the real way is not difficult. It only dislikes picking and choosing. Only when you don't hate and love will the way reveal itself. So this real way, free from hate and love, what is that? That is the way of the universe. Our tiny planet, the Earth, revolves around the sun. And this whole solar system whirls around the center of the Milky Way. The sun gets up in the morning, the birds start singing, the clouds disperse, the children walk to school, then it's spring, it's summer, it's fall, then follows winter. And the trees, or rather the leaves, they don't choose to stay on the tree when the fall comes, and the snow doesn't choose to remain on the ground when the sun burns it away. Or the seeds, they don't pick to stay in the ground, but they open up and they become fruits and flowers and trees when the sun and the rain hits them. There's nothing difficult in this. When we wake up in the morning, we just wake up. When we eat, we eat. When we sleep, we sleep. When we are happy, we are happy. And when we are sad, we might cry. We are sad. That's the way. Fully revealed. It's effortless. But this way of the universe, our own way, is really threatened by our own misguided perceptions, by these selfish ways of consumptions, always wanting more, picking and choosing, by all these preferences and divisions. And yet, our practice, what does it give us? It always calls it out for this faith in our own true heart, that heart in the Bodhisattva. And as Shifu, my teacher, always tells us, to solve this crisis, this ecological crisis, we have to come back to our heart, to that mind, to this spiritual dimension of our being. This is where our true love for the earth and all the beings on it springs from. So let us take the earth as a witness, just as the Buddha did, and then continue our practice with confidence to realize that world that is beyond all of our notions and concepts, beyond time and space, and then fully come back to this world with all of its troubles, and then do everything for everyone, helping everyone to heal, helping the earth to heal. As Susan says at the end of his poem, faith and mind, faith and the heart are undivided. And he ends by saying, the way of the heart, the way of the words is not, the way of the words is cut off, leaving no past, no present, and no future. And I think with that, the ways of the words are cut off. And I'm ending my teisho with that. Thanking you for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Henry, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. I'd love to just first thank you, Maria, so very much. Great to see you and great to hear your beautiful sharing. I have something I wanted to ask, just a very sort of a small translation question. I think you'll know. You know, the title in Chinese, of course, is Xin Xin Ming. Right? Is that? I mean, are they two separate characters, both pronounced Xin? One meaning faith, one meaning heart, or how does that work?
Yes, that's right. Xin and Xin. So one is the heart and one is faith, but they are pronounced the same way. Yes.
Okay. And what is does it really, to you, does it mean faith in the heart? Is that what that construction means?
Faith in that heart of the Bodhisattva, faith in this reality that is expressed in that heart of the Bodhisattva, which is this reality which is undivided, interconnected, and our potential to realize that and then to go and live it.
Yeah. What about I mean, would you, if people want to ask you questions, is that okay?
Of course, yes.
So please, anybody, if you'd like to raise your hand, in the reactions tab, then you'll come to the top of the window so we can see. But I have another question about do you feel anything about, Buddha calling on the earth as his witness at this time when we are being so destructive to the earth? How does that, isn't it witnessing us in a way that we can see now how destructive we're being? And it's funny, you started with climate change, and I wonder, I don't know, just what is I don't know, do you have any thoughts about that? Maybe, I don't know if you do, but it's like it's showing us, it is being our witness indeed.
Yes, I think it's our witness indeed, like the morning star is the witness, or shows is the witness to Buddha Shakyamuni's enlightenment. So the earth, the destruction that's happening, is a witness to our own greed, ignorance, and but it doesn't stop there. If we stop, then we would, with our own greed and ignorance, destruction of the earth, and then we would feel this kind of deep inner despair. I think that would be the opposite of faith. And so our practice is not about that despair, but it is about the faith that makes us go on. And that is actually what I so deeply experience in these religious leaders that I meet, who take it upon themselves to be witnesses to that goodness of the heart that we all possess, and to our potential to actually do something about all this destruction that we are causing the earth. Yes, so that's how I see it.
Beautiful people. And do you find that are many of them kind of mobilizing their followers in the way?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I had to give a talk about that with URI yesterday, and all the tools that are now available from different, even the Vatican, there are websites where people can learn exactly what they need to do as communities. And if that's your question, there are many church related communities that now divest from all these polluting industries and put their funds into green energies. It's really becoming a movement, and many communities do actual things like cleaning up the river Ganges, or I could go on and on about this, but things are really happening, and that's why I'm so encouraged. Even though I have to say that I was also disappointed by the results of the conference in Copenhagen, but we are going on. Our group keeps meeting. We are preparing the next meeting. Because if one thing that we learn from our practice is that we need to have patience, right? And we need to have this trust and faith, even if we think that we may no longer be able to accomplish that during our own lifetime. It has to go on. That's how I see it. And I see this deep trust. So the Green Patriarch of the Orthodox Church, Bartholomew, he says, to be a person, to be a spiritual person is to care for the earth. There can be no other way. And that's a message that he gives to all of his followers, and they also engage in very concrete actions. So this awareness of the earth, witnessing the earth, touching the earth, I think this awareness is becoming rather widespread. And the obstacles, if one awareness arises, there are also the obstacles that arise. That seems to be natural. But then the obstacles are also like Shifu always says, if there are many obstacles, it means that it's a good thing worthwhile doing. So don't be disappointed by the obstacles.
Would anybody else like to ask anything of Maria? Well, we're so lucky to have her with us.
I just wanted to add a word of thanks, Maria, and just was struck in all of this richness, this comment that you lifted up in different ways. I am sitting for you, addressed to the pain of the world and also to our own demons and our own doubts. I am sitting for you. And it brought up Thich Nhat Hanh's mantra, darling, I am with you. This embrace that is at the heart of this practice, and that Shifu experienced sitting in the graveyard.
Yes, this creating of space, unbounded space that lets everything in, while usually our space is rather limited, and this practice helps us to extend it infinitely.
So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Any other questions? I'll be sitting with your words, Maria. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Especially your words about faith. Faith has always been something that I wouldn't say I've struggled with, because I feel like I have great faith, but it's like faith is a verb, it's a process, it's something that carries us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a set of beliefs or a...
That's correct, yes. It's this trust in your own potential, and that easily is taken away from us through so many things, and to have that faith and have it clarified again and again, that trust, that faith.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Abby, go ahead. unmute yourself. Let's see.
Hi, thank you so much for that show. And I do have a question. I'm wondering, to what extent in your particular faith as a Catholic, and then moving into deepening Zen experience, that you felt it necessary, I don't know how to put this because I don't know what your experience was, but to either revise or alter or perhaps dismiss certain specific doctrines that are orthodox in your faith?
Dismiss, that is a very...
Revise or reinterpret?
I think it's understanding certain doctrines. I think you have a different approach to the reality that may be even covered up by the doctrines, but I never doubt that the reality is there. And so actually it inspires me to do a lot of reading of Christian spiritual writers, because I think we all struggle perhaps with similar issues, but we also try to understand them. So recently I ordered a book by a French person at the beginning of the 20th century about the church, the vision of the church. Because right now what we see through all the scandals and everything, that vision is completely destroyed to a certain extent. And so what is this original inspiration? What is this vision? What is the church all about? What is the sacred community? This is what I'm interested in. And I experience that sacred community when I go to church on Sundays and receive communion. And that is really something that is beyond words, as Susan says, because there is this deep sharing on the heart level. And those are the important moments. And I think for Catholics anyway, everything centers around that Eucharist where everything is offered up on that altar, as it were. All the fruits of the earth, all our labors, all of our human toils and troubles, everything is taken up and transformed for the sharing of everybody else. So you come to see things in a different light, in a deeper light, I hope. And but you keep exploring, you never stop exploring. There is never the point where you say, no, I got it. Not at all.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So let us say thank you again, Maria, for this spaciousness of the heart.
Yes. Thank you so much, Valerie and Henry. And as I said, everyone who so wonderfully supports the practice at Mountain Cloud and gives so much to the whole community who's able to link in, for all of your participation. And thank you to your wonderful teachers. Everyone is very blessed.
I noticed we did have one more question. Are you willing to take it?
Okay.
Donald?
Of course.
Maybe he left.
I think he disappeared.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
It's just a question about, you were mentioning, and I was reflecting on some of the stuff that we talked about during the last retreat, is this notion of original sin.
Mm-hmm.
And you're so into the Catholic tradition, and I'd love to have you speak a little about that, because I think that's hard for a lot of us Westerners to understand if we're already damned. versus, like the Dalai Lama had a hard time figuring out why we feel that way.
Yes, and that is a really good question. I must say honestly that I never grew up with this notion, being raised as a Catholic. And if you look at the scriptures, you can see how God created everything and he saw that it was good. That is repeated over and over and over again. God saw that it was good. So this original sin, I think it's a human experience that we have some shortcomings, each and every one of us, and we try working on those limitations and so on. But honestly, I'm not a theologian. So who first came up with this notion of original sin? I don't even know exactly, but it's something that now theologians also speak about or write about, original blessedness. So I think the focus, certainly there are churches and communities that do scare people with this notion of original sin. But then again, I mean, the Christian story, isn't that about how, if there was an original sin, how that was resolved and that we are now free to go? And I think deep down that all religions have these stories of liberation, and they can be buried under a lot of debris, which is not necessary. So if we keep digging, then we come to that source where these difficult doctrines that Abby also asked about are no longer clouding our spirit. And then I think we can help people who are oppressed by these notions and say, but look, there's a very different understanding here. And we do a lot of this in our interfaith work, actually, where we do pick up these difficult passages in scriptures and discuss them and say, so how do we deal with these things? And ultimately, it does come down to a matter of interpretation. So if that helps you, I go with the original blessedness, and I find lots of indications that that is correct when I read the Psalms, for example. The other things, but it doesn't, I don't deny that we have our blind spots, as it were. And sin originally comes from asunder, right? A separation. And can we claim for ourselves that we are never separated? I don't think so. And so that's where it comes from, this habitual separation in our mind. Does that answer your question, Donald?
It helps a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maria, I think it's in Genesis. It's known as the fall of man, isn't it? The original sin, isn't that what it is?
Now you mean the story of Adam and Eve?
Yeah, I think that's where it's thought to sort of begin.
Yes. So that's we have to see what stories are trying to tell us. And so this story is really about a separation from the oneness, the unity with God, right? And people, and so Shifu speaks about that as really the beginning of our separating mind, the beginning of our confusion, where we start. And so Adam and Eve is a story about that. And this is how I tend to see it, because I don't think we can deny that we are in a state of separation. But that's not what defines us. What defines us is what the Buddha realized, not the other thing. But I think we have to acknowledge that we have problems at times, and this brings us to religious practice. Otherwise, why would we even try to do and sit and meditate and become whole again? Because we feel that something is not quite whole in us. So that's how I see it. So every story, of course, is open to the telling and to the interpretation. Does that answer your question, Henry? I'm happy to see Jay, one of our students in South Bend. Hello.
Okay, well, Maria, thank you again so very, very much. It's wonderful to receive your wisdom and light, shining light. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and being here with me tonight. Thank you, everyone.